Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Watch my video and subscribes my channel. Ridge finds out. Taylor's secret man has been exposed and it's all over. The end of Ridge and Taylor? Ridge Forrester stood frozen in the Forrester mansion. The familiar scent of polished mahogany and Forrester history surrounding him. But it all felt like an alien world now. A hollow shell echoing with lies that had been whispered right beneath his nose for months. Maybe even years, because at this moment, everything he thought he knew about Taylor Hayes, the woman he had defended, the woman he had chosen over Brooke Logan, the woman he believed to be his anchor of loyalty and trust, was shattering with each cruel syllable of the message replaying on his phone. The voice of the man on the other end dripping with a mixture of arrogance and familiarity. Taylor, you can't keep this hidden forever, he's going to find out, and when he does, we'll finally be free. And Ridge's knuckles whitened around the edge of the Forrester desk, his mind racing through every late-night call Taylor claimed was from a patient. Every mysterious trip, she said, was about a medical conference, every unreadable look she gave him when Brooke was near. And suddenly the name came out like a ghost, rising from the grave. Nick Marone. Could this be him? Was it someone else entirely? The walls of the mansion seemed to close in as Steffi Forrester walked in, her voice cheerful about the designs for the new Forrester Creations line, only to stop mid-sentence when she saw her father's expression, and Thomas followed moments later, his tablet in hand, oblivious at first until Ridge slammed his phone down on the table and said the words that would ignite the most explosive Forrester family implosion in years. Your mother has been seeing someone, and it's not me. The silence that followed was like a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room, and Steffi's lips parted, her breath caught between disbelief and horror, because she knew her mother had been fragile, insecure, and desperate to keep Ridge close ever since Brooke's shadow loomed over their reunion. But a secret man? Thomas tried to defend her at first, insisting there had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding, a jealous rival planting evidence. But Ridge pulled up the photos, the late-night rendezvous outside Aiel Giardino, the hand Taylor thought no one would see slipping into another man's. The kiss that wasn't just a slip, it was intimacy born of history and secrecy, and the name became undeniable. Nick Marone, the sailor, the one-time lover of both Taylor and Brooke, the ghost from Steffi's rage, was volcanic not only at her mother, but at the humiliation this would bring to the Forrester family, to the company, to her own marriage with Finn, which she had often held up as a model of stability against her parents' chaos. And Thomas's jaw set, his artist's mind already calculating the fallout, how the press would spin this, how Brooke would wield it like a sword, because if there was one thing Brooke Logan knew how to do, it was wait for Taylor to Ridge stormed out that night, driving the familiar road to Brooke's estate, not because he was ready to forgive her for everything in their past, but because in his pain and humiliation he realized that Brooke had always been one thing Taylor was not, honest about her flaws, lovers, and mistakes. She never pretended to be perfect, never hid behind a veil of saintly motherhood while sneaking off with a ghost from the past. Brooke opened the door in her silk robe, shocked to see him, and the moment their eyes met, she knew something cataclysmic had happened, because the Ridge who left her for Taylor had been smug, certain, ready to rewrite destiny, but the Ridge standing before her now was a man stripped bare, betrayed, desperate for a familiar anchor in a storm that was only just beginning, because Taylor Hayes was nowhere to be found. She had fled, perhaps with Nick, perhaps alone, leaving only a note. I never meant to hurt you, but I had to follow my heart. The next days became a circus. Eric Forrester furious at the scandal threatening the new couture line. Hope Logan torn between gloating and sympathy as she watched Steffi unravel. Bill Spencer sniffing opportunity like a shark in bloodied waters as he offered Brooke an exclusive magazine spread about the truth behind Taylor's betrayal. And even Sheila Carter, from her vantage point of semi-redemption, watching the Forrester fortress crumble with a sly smile, whispering to Deacon that destiny had a twisted sense of humor. Ridge confronted Taylor in Monaco, where she had run to meet Nick, and the scene was volcanic. Accusations flying about loyalty, about history, about how she had begged him not to return to Brooke only to be the one who couldn't stay true. And in that confrontation, years of suppressed resentment erupted. How Ridge had left her for Brooke again and again. How Taylor had felt like a placeholder, a second choice. How Nick had been the only one who made her feel like a woman. And as the press, cameras captured every frame, the Forrester family line began to fracture. Steffi choosing to stand by her mother publicly while seething privately. Thomas torn between his parents' war and his own plans for his future with hope. And Brooke, ever the phoenix, rising from the ashes of humiliation she had once endured, now positioned to reclaim the man she had always called her destiny. But Ridge wasn't willing to forgive anyone, not Brooke, Taylor, or himself, for believing in an illusion of permanence in a world founded on treachery. The story lasted weeks, with court battles over Forrester Creations' control, magazine exposés about Taylor's secret affair, Nick's mysterious business dealings in Genoa City leaking into Los Angeles, and even whispers that Taylor might be pregnant, a twist that sent the entire family into meltdown mode because if the child was Nick's, it would be the final nail in the coffin of Tridge, the romance that had been resurrected only to die an even more public death. Ridge stood alone on the cliffs above Malibu, the same cliffs where he once swore eternal love to both women at different points in his life, the ocean roaring like the chaos in his mind, and whispered, "It's all over." But in the distance, Brooke approached, not as a victor, but as someone who still believed that destiny, for all its cruelty, always left a door open. And as the sun set over the Pacific, the next chapter began, not with forgiveness, but with the Forrester mansion, normally a temple of curated elegance, became a battlefield, with Eric Forrester pacing the grand living room like a general who had just discovered his fortress walls were crumbling. Donna at his side wringing her hands, and Quinn, ever opportunistic, appearing just long enough to whisper that perhaps this was the price of Ridge playing destiny like a revolving door between two women. Steffi Forrester had shut herself in her Forrester Creations office, skipping a series of high-stakes meetings with European investors since stories had already begun to circulate in the fashion world. Taylor Hayes spotted with Nick Marone in Monaco. Secret meeting revealed. Is Tridge over before it started? And the tabloids were feasting like vultures, their headlines screaming across glossy covers that mocked the very concept of true love. Thomas Forrester, ever the strategist when it came to controlling narratives, attempted to pull the reins on the PR disaster, calling Hope Logan late at night, his voice tight with unspoken desperation, asking her to help manage the fallout because if Forrester Creations' image tanked, they all would suffer. But Hope, though compassion Ridge, on the other hand, was a storm without a harbor, driving up and down the Pacific Coast Highway like a man possessed, replaying every moment of his reconciliation with Taylor, her tearful promises, her gentle touch, her insistence that she was the one who truly understood him, each memory now feeling like a performance layered over a private truth she was never brave enough to admit. When he finally confronted Nick Marone face-to-face at the marina, it was not the fiery brawl tabloids would later claim, but a cold, venomous exchange of men who had danced this dance before, Ridge accusing Nick of slithering back into his life just to claim what wasn't his, Nick smirking that perhaps Taylor was never really Ridge's to keep, that perhaps she had been waiting all along for someone who saw her not as a consolation prize, not as a stand-in when Brooke felt the words penetrated, deeper than any fist could. And then came the twist that sent the Forrester world into absolute freefall. Taylor Hayes, after days of silence, returned not to Ridge, not to her children, but to a press conference, yes, a press conference at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where with cameras flashing and microphones shoved toward her face, she admitted to the affair, admitted to months of secret meetings with Nick, and then, with a tremor in her voice that was either guilt or something more complicated, gasps erupted like a physical wave, reporters scrambling for the scoop, Brooke nearly dropping her champagne glass when the alert popped up on her phone, and Ridge, watching from the back of the room, felt his world tilt completely off axis, because this wasn't just betrayal, this was legacy, Forrester legacy, tainted, rewritten, and possibly even replaced. Steffi's loyalties was shattered in that instant, her protective daughter instinct competing with her CEO's intellect, as she realized this would tarnish every contract, photo shoot, and philanthropic event they had planned for the coming fiscal year. Thomas, for all his flaws, attempted to reach out to Taylor in order to salvage something, but she dismissed him, insisting that this was about her happiness now, that she had lived for too long for Ridge's approval, for her children's image of a perfect family, for a rivalry with Brooke that had consumed her life like a disease, and that she was now choosing herself, even if it meant destroying everything else. Ridge retreated to Brooke's mansion in Malibu, not because he wanted to fall back into her arms, but because Brooke, as frustrating as she was, had always served as a mirror, forcing him to confront his reality, pride, and mistakes. She listened without gloating, but a flicker of triumph danced in her eyes when he finally said the words, "I was wrong to think she was any different." Bill Spencer, never one to pass up a business opportunity wrapped in a scandal, offered to buy exclusive rights to Taylor's confession for Ion Fashion, spinning it as a tale of modern love and betrayal that would sell both magazines and ad slots. Katie Logan urged caution. Hope begged peace. But the city buzzed with the electricity that only a Forrester breakdown could provide. Sheila Carter, ever the predator circling the edges of respectability, seized the opportunity to move closer to Steffi under the guise of support, sowing seeds of doubt about Taylor's judgment, about who truly had Steffi's best interests at heart, and whispering that perhaps it was time to abandon childish notions of family loyalty in favor of survival. And as autumn gave way to winter, the lines hardened. Tridge was broken, not by Brooke this time, but by Taylor's own hand. Bridge lingered in a limbo of cautious reconnection. Steffi and Thomas fought quietly over the company's direction, and Taylor, radiant and defiant, prepared to bring a new child into a world already sharpening its knives. But in the quiet hours before dawn, Ridge found himself staring at the ocean, wondering if destiny was a lie they told themselves to justify bad decisions, and whether love, true love, could ever survive the constant betrayals they called life in Los Angeles. The announcement of Taylor's pregnancy was a detonator, and Los Angeles felt the shock waves right away. Ridge Forrester, normally the master of composure, found himself unraveling in ways that surprised even those closest to him. Every aspect of his life, his family, his business, and his heart, had been infected by falsehoods, and the realization that Taylor had not only betrayed him, but was now carrying another man's child drove him to the brink of despair. The Forrester mansion, already tense, became a fortress under assault. Eric attempted to intervene, insisting that the family demonstrate unity to investors, but his words went unheard. Steffi paced the corridors like a caged leopard, her eyes full of wrath and astonishment. She was conflicted between her role as a daughter, which needed loyalty to Taylor, and her role as a Forrester Creations leader, which necessitated maintaining the family's public image. Every press call, murmur in the fashion sector, and flash of cameras outside the mansion appeared to repeat the same verdict. Tridge is finished. Taylor's betrayal is public. Nick Marone is back in the picture. Meanwhile, Thomas Forrester, always calculating, recognized he was at a crossroads. Taylor's scandal jeopardized his mother's image, his sister's stability, and Ridge's ability to make sound decisions. But it also created new opportunities. With Hope Logan lurking like a hawk and recognizing Ridge's fragility, Thomas had to think carefully about relationships. He approached Hope under the pretext of crisis management, seeking to coordinate damage control, but she had her other plans. She couldn't bear the image of Ridge collapsing beneath the weight of Taylor's deception, and her heart, which had been tentatively opening to Ridge again, suddenly danced with the appeal of time and chance. Brooke Logan watched the unfolding calamity with a mix of pity and deliberate calculation, while Ridge saw fed in isolation. She had loved Ridge throughout their lives, and now, seeing him crushed by Taylor's deception, she felt a pulse of something old, dangerous, and compelling flare within her. She brought Ridge to Malibu not to gloat, but to convey the truth, the stark honesty that Ridge's mind required but his heart refused to accept. When he arrived, soaking from the rain and trembling with wrath, she did not pass judgment, merely offered a mirror. She reminded him of all the times Taylor had left, the compromises Ridge had made, the illusions he had allowed to blind him, and Ridge, despite his rage, felt the sharp sting of reality. Brooke had always been fearless with love, honest even when it hurt. And in that honesty, Ridge saw a sanctuary he had never truly found with Taylor. Taylor, on the other hand, was forging her own way, brilliant and determined. She did not retreat in humiliation. Instead, she moved forward with purpose. She held her head high during news appearances, speaking of love, passion, and the fortitude to follow one's heart. She and Nick discussed their future steps in private, realizing that their relationship could jeopardize not only Ridge's trust, but also the whole fabric of Forrester Creations. Every action Taylor took appeared to be intended to provoke, to establish control over her future, but each one also showed flaws. She couldn't shake the feelings of remorse for the children, Steffi and Ridge, and the truth gnawed at her despite the bold face she wore for the cameras. Back at the house, Steffi made a bold step that stunned everyone. She faced Taylor in her bedroom, raw, emotional, and unfiltered. "What are you doing, Mom? Do you aware everyone is watching? Ridge is collapsing. The corporation is in disarray, and you—" She paused, unable to continue, her voice shaking. Taylor responded with tears in her eyes and a stubborn smile. "I am living my truth, Steffi. I can't be a prisoner to what the world expects of me anymore." The words stabbed like a dagger. Steffi was caught between devotion, humiliation, and increasing rage, like a tornado threatening to tear her apart. Nick Marone, the darkly charismatic wild card, placed himself into the tempest with precision. He courted the cameras, made veiled threats about revealing Ridge's secrets, and made quiet pledges to Taylor that portrayed him as both protector and predator. Their dynamic, which combined passion, power, and manipulation, began to poison the Forrester ecology from the inside out. Ridge, unable to reconcile Taylor's betrayal, Nick's chutzpah, and Brooke's increasing presence, descended into obsessive decision-making, contemplating dramatic measures that would permanently damage the family. The media frenzy intensified as speculations circulated that Taylor's pregnancy might not be straightforward. Whispers of a probable paternity test, medical issues, and even suspicions that Taylor is playing a lengthy game to solidify Nick's power over the Forrester legacy circulated in newspapers and on social media. Each day brought a new blow. A magazine cover with Taylor smiling while Nick's hand rested possessively on her waist. A paparazzi photograph of Ridge's enraged confrontation on a Monaco yacht. Brooke quietly entering and leaving the scene without comment. Steffi storming out of board meetings mid-session. Thomas negotiating with investors concerned about the public scandal. Layers of chaos piling on top of one another. And in those quiet minutes, Ridge grasped the unavoidable truth. He had lost control. Taylor's judgments, Nick's presence, Brooke's calculating patience, Steffi's inner turmoil, and Thomas's strategic tactics had all combined into a storm he couldn't control. Despite his grief, a spark of clarity ignited. The only way forward was uncompromising honesty, bold action, and possibly, in the ashes of betrayal, a chance to recapture not only his heart, but also the Forrester legacy. The battle lines were drawn. Tridge had ended, but the battle for Ridge Forrester's heart, mind, and future with Taylor Hayes and the whole Forrester company had only just begun.